One of the most successful toy lines of all time may not actually be a toy line depending who you ask, or rather, who you are, or rather, what you collect. It walked a fine line existing in two worlds at the same time, bringing two groups of collectors together in a way that no other line had. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of Starting Lineup. Starting Lineup is a series of sports figures from Kenner and later Hasbro that originally ran from 1988 through 2001. Over that 14-year period, the line expanded to include athletes from all manner of professional sports: baseball, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, gymnastics, auto racing, track and field, golf, boxing, and ice skating. Most of the figures were roughly 4 to 5 inches tall. There were a variety of action poses to bring the sports to life, to capture moments of peak human performance: throwing, catching, running, jumping, sliding, punching, or standing near a car. The figures were packed with a trading card, helping to drive the collectible nature and act as the catalyst for the crossover of worlds, sports fans and toy fans coming together through their shared love of collecting things. Starting Lineup was created by Pat McAnally. Pat was a punter and receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals from 1977 through 1985. He was drafted out of Harvard, a school known more for doctors and lawyers than for being a gateway to professional sports. But Pat was smart. To date, Pat is the only NFL player to get a perfect score on the Wonderlic test. The test is designed to assess the cognitive ability and problem-solving aptitude of prospective employees across a range of occupations, not just sports. For the National Football League, it helps create a more complete profile of a prospect to help predict how they might fare in one position or another compared against prospects current and former. Pat was undeniably smart, creative, and insightful. In the sport with the second highest concussion rate, he had a successful football career in the position that encounters the least amount of interpersonal contact. Pat used that mental fitness to challenge himself off the field. In addition to playing football, he wrote Pat Answers for Kids, a syndicated advice column in newspapers around the country where kids could write in and get answers to questions like, "How can I convince my parents to let me take karate?" Cincinnati brought Pat moderate fame and fortune, but in 1986, at the end of his football career, fate would lead to the next big chapter in his life. Pat just happened to sell his condo to Bruce Stein, who just happened to be the senior vice president of marketing at Cincinnati-based Kenner Products. Kenner, the company that brought you Star Wars, superpowers, and mask action figures, was always looking for fresh new ideas. Bruce asked Pat if he had any ideas for a toy line. Bruce figured after writing a kids' advice column, Pat might have some insight into what kids might be interested in, and he did. Pat proposed a line of sports action figures where the players were like dinosaurs instead of people? To which Bruce laughed and said no. Swing and a miss. Pat stepped out of the box, took a walk through the toy aisle at a local store. He-Man, Optimus Prime, Luke Skywalker, and Bazooka from G.I. Joe. A whole lot of heroes, but not a lot of real heroes. That said, Bazooka just happens to be wearing a New England Patriots jersey, which got Pat to thinking, why not a whole line of action figures of athletes, real people that kids already looked up to, but as action figures? He took the idea back to Bruce, who brought it to the rest of senior management, and they loved it with a but. We love it, but the NFL is about to enter a player strike. There might not even be a season. Unlikely we're going to get that license. Pat was certain he could get it based on the connections he already had in the NFL and the Players Association. Kenner gave Pat 7 days to see if he could get the license and a $100,000 check if he promised not to sell the idea to any other toy company.
It was nightfall, and the kids' parents were still on the street looking for a great price on Kenner's Starting Lineup figures, till I gave them this tip: hot-footed over to Children's Palace, where right now you'll uncover Kenner's Starting Lineup figures for merely $3.99 each. They look just like the real players and come with their own collector's cards, too. At Children's Palace, prices so low you'll want to investigate them all. So head for Children's Palace, where you'll discover how much less toys can cost. Case closed.
In 1988, Kenner kicked off starting lineup with the three major professional sports licenses all in hand: MLB, NFL, and the NBA. At a time when the popularity of sports celebrities was surging, when sports card collecting was on an upward trajectory with no ceiling in sight. Starting lineup was a crossover product. It appealed to traditional sports collectors with the inclusion of a trading card, but the figure itself represented a new way to collect their favorite teams or players or to complete a set. For figure collectors, for kids who liked toys, it was a completely new genre that had gone mostly unserved. Prior to 1988, there were very few licensed sports figures available. Bobbleheads hardly count. Electric football games that started in the 1940s had tiny little football guys, but the likenesses were terrible. The most notable figures were Heartland Statues' Major League Baseball stars. Featuring the biggest names of baseball from the 50s and 60s, it was the first fully licensed line of sports figures. Hand-painted, roughly 8 inches tall, they were sold at stadiums and collectible stores for around $2. More importantly, they were designed and sold as toys. Transagram figures that were closer to 3.5 inches, 60 players in the first year, no facial or important individual details. The figures weren't really even trying to look like the players. The individual player was defined more by the box and the trading cards that could be cut out from the box backing. Starting lineup found the sweet spot of size, price point, and, for the time, realism. In an era just coming down from Star Wars action figures as the industry standard, starting lineups were, close enough. Collecting starting lineup figures was a challenge. In the days before the internet, you had no other option than to go to a store and buy them. But distribution was regionalized. Boston teams ended up in Boston. Oakland teams ended up in Oakland. It was the right general sales approach, but made it difficult for anyone looking to complete the set. Sales for starting lineup were huge. A whole range of age groups were collecting them, from kids through the parents of those kids, casual and hardcore fans looking to buy at least one of each, complete a roster, build their own all-star team, or buy multiples to sell in the future like they would have with regular sports cards. Within a year, the line expanded to more sports and sets themed beyond current rosters: 2-packs, team sets, one-on-one, Hall of Famers, supplementary products like helmet collections and player bases, accessories like basketball hoops for players to dunk on each other, and an official collectors club and newsletter to keep the anticipation high. In 1991, Kenner was purchased by Hasbro, but that didn't stop starting lineup from being a major player in the toy and collectible scene. The figures became a staple of sports collectible shops and shows. In fact, starting in 1994, there were annual starting lineup collector shows. By 1995, there were show-exclusive figures. One of the most historically significant exclusives was issued at the 1997 convention. After nearly 10 years in existence, the line would finally have an official Pat McAnally figure featuring Pat during his days as a Cincinnati Bengal, a figure he did not qualify for throughout the line because he wasn't a Hall of Famer and also had retired before he invented the line. The late 90s saw the introduction of more themed sets, more accessory gimmicks, and even 12-inch figures. But the end was looming. The quantity of available players per team and per league was intentionally decreased each year since the line began, in the interest of making collecting an entire year set more realistic. The result, however, was that individual figures became overproduced, values went down per figure, and the emergence of the internet had begun to level the playing field. Pricing was no longer determined by shops and price guides, it was determined by the open market. Distribution issues went away as collectors in different markets could easily trade with each other. Starting lineup was showing its age by the year 2000. The sculpts had improved a smidge over the years, but not consistent with what was being done around the rest of the toy and collectible market. Toys and collectibles, action figures were getting bigger in terms of scale and far more detailed. Todd McFarlane started his toy company in 1994, and by 2000 he had already shifted the entire action figure market based on the popularity of his character Spawn and other licensed products that he was producing. McFarlane Toys had become known for the detailed likenesses for Kiss, Ozzy Osbourne, horror icons in his Movie Maniacs line, and characters in X-Files and Austin Powers. Casual and hardcore sports collectors were begging McFarlane to take on sports, knowing that he was a sports fan. In 1998, Todd paid nearly $3 million for Mark McGwire's then record-breaking 70th home run ball. McFarlane was able to secure the license for the NHL and MLB Players Associations, and in the year 2000 released his first series of McFarlane sports picks. Each player was sculpted with a ridiculously accurate likeness for the time and a larger scale than starting lineup. While each player was dressed in a uniform of the appropriate colors of their respective teams, they lacked official logos since McFarlane didn't actually have the league licenses. Yet. With Hasbro's 2001 baseball assortment, starting lineup would come to an end. That same year, McFarlane Toys released the first wave of sports picks with both the League and Players Association licenses, and a new era of collectible sports figures was born. Today, there is an active collector scene for starting lineup figures. While most figures can be purchased loose at very affordable prices, many just above original retail, carded and more specifically high-graded pieces can command hundreds if not thousands of dollars. Hasbro let the trademark for starting lineup lapse, and in 2014 it was acquired by a company called Legacy One. In 2016, they brought starting lineup back as sponsored stadium giveaways, beginning with Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay for the 2016 football season. Each year since, they have released a very select few figures, packaging modeled after the packaging and style of figures that made the line so popular to so many collectors for so many years. Starting lineup figures were originally priced at $3.99 each in 1988. Over 14 years, they racked up approximately $700 million in sales for Kenner and Hasbro, and Pat McInally, Harvard graduate, All-American, Pro Bowl punter, advice columnist, and toy inventor, got a royalty on every single one. As a line, starting lineup changed the sports collectibles market. It made an impact that is still being felt today. It brought new people to a genre of collecting that they had never been involved in. It put Pat McInally on the same shelf as He-Man, Luke Skywalker, and Optimus Prime. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. If you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy or become a YouTube channel member. Both Patreon and YouTube channel membership have the same exclusive content, so choose your own adventure. Please share this video and let us know in the comments down below if you've ever collected starting lineup figures then or now. If not, what kept you away? Don't like sports? Likeness is not good enough for you? Don't know who Damon Berryhill is?
I think for the Cubs.
I don't know.
There's a fan of Damon Berryhill.
Yeah.